He promised to love her forever. But when she needed him most, he simply disappeared. And his silence became the cruelest punishment she ever imagined living through. The house was silent. A heavy, suffocating silence that seemed to swallow every corner of that apartment that was once filled with laughter. Marina sat on the couch, staring at her phone. No messages. No calls. Nothing. He was there, on the other side of the wall, in the same house, breathing the same air. But to her, it was as if he had evaporated. As if he had died without really leaving. And worst of all was that she didn't know what she had done wrong. There was no fight. No betrayal. No explanation. Just silence. A silence that hurt more than any scream ever could. Have you ever felt like you were screaming into the void and no one heard you? Like your words simply disappeared into the air, ignored, dismissed, erased? This is what millions of people live every day inside their own relationships. And today you're going to discover how silence can be the deadliest weapon someone can use against you. Marina was 32 years old when she met Raphael. He was everything she had always dreamed of. Attentive, caring, present. In the first months, he flooded her with messages, calls, surprises. She felt seen, loved, complete. They got married after 2 years of dating, in a simple ceremony but full of promises. Promises that, little by little, began to fall apart like sand between her fingers. It all started subtly. A shorter response here. An averted gaze there. Conversations that used to last hours now ended in minutes. Marina tried to convince herself it was just a phase. That work was stressful. That he was tired. But deep down, she knew something had changed. And then came the silence. The silence didn't arrive all at once. It settled in gradually, like a cold fog taking over everything. First, Raphael stopped responding to her messages during the day. Then he stopped talking about work. Then he stopped making plans for the future. And finally, he stopped looking into her eyes. Marina tried to talk. She asked if everything was okay, if there was anything she could do. But his answers were always the same, empty and automatic. Everything's fine. I'm just tired. It's nothing. But it was everything. His silence was everything. It was an invisible wall growing between them, brick by brick, unspoken word by unspoken word. And the worst part is that Marina started to blame herself. Did I talk too much? Did I demand too much? Am I not interesting anymore? Did I do something wrong? The questions multiplied in her mind like poison, corroding her self-esteem, her confidence, her sanity. She began walking on eggshells in her own home, afraid of bothering him, afraid of provoking more silence. And that's how she realized the most painful truth of all. His silence wasn't absence. It was presence. It was a choice. It was punishment. Psychologists have a name for this. The silent treatment. And it's not just coldness or distance. It's a form of emotional abuse recognized by science. When someone uses silence as a weapon, they're exercising absolute control over the other person. They're saying, without words, that you don't deserve my attention, my presence, my humanity. It's a way of erasing the other person's existence, making them feel like they don't matter, like they don't exist. And it works precisely because it leaves no visible marks. There are no screams, no physical violence, No offensive words that can be pointed out. Just absence. And that absence corrodes from the inside like acid. Marina started having anxiety attacks. She would wake up in the middle of the night with her heart racing, checking her phone, waiting for a message that never came. She stopped eating right, stopped sleeping right, stopped living right. Her entire life became a constant wait for a sign that he still cared. For a word. For a look. For anything that proved she still existed to him. And then, on a rainy Thursday night, it happened. Marina was in the kitchen preparing dinner when she heard the front door close. Rafael had left. Without warning. Without saying where he was going. Without saying when he'd return. And something inside her broke. It wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It was clarity. A clarity cold and sharp as glass. She finally understood that she was living with a ghost. With someone who had chosen to punish her for crimes she never committed. For needs she dared to express. For emotions she had the courage to feel. And in that moment, Marina made the most difficult and most liberating decision of her life. She grabbed her phone and wrote a message. Not to him. To herself. I deserve to be heard. I deserve to be seen. I deserve to exist. And then, for the first time in months, she felt something different from fear and anxiety. She felt anger. A clean, necessary, powerful anger. The anger of someone who finally realizes they've been deceived. That they've been manipulated. That they've been punished for something they never did. Marina didn't sleep that night. She stayed awake, researching, reading, understanding. She discovered that what she was living through had a name, had an explanation, and, most importantly, had a solution. When Rafael came back in the early morning hours, he found Marina awake in the living room. He did what he always did. He walked past her as if she wasn't there. Went straight to the bedroom. But this time, Marina followed him. And for the first time in months, she spoke. She didn't ask. She didn't beg. She didn't question what she had done wrong. She simply told the truth. I know what you're doing. I know your silence is deliberate. I know you're punishing me for existing, for feeling, for needing. And I'm not going to accept it anymore. Rafael turned around, surprised. He tried to use the same old tactic. The empty stare. The indifference. The silence. But Marina didn't look away. You can stay silent if you want. But I'm not going to wait anymore. I'm not going to blame myself anymore. I'm not going to disappear to make you comfortable. And if you can't love me with words, with presence, with respect, then you don't really love me. And I'm not going to spend my life begging for scraps of affection from someone who should give me the world. The silence that came after was different. It wasn't the wall he built to punish her. It was the emptiness that settled between two people who had finally shown their true faces. Rafael tried to speak. Tried to explain himself. Said he didn't realize what he was doing. That this was how he had learned to deal with conflict. That he didn't know how to communicate. But Marina had heard enough. Because she knew the truth. It doesn't matter how you learned. It doesn't matter why you do it. What matters is that you choose to do it. And I choose not to accept it anymore. In the following days, Marina began to reorganize. She talked to friends she had abandoned, went back to therapy, started planning her life independently. And with each passing day, she felt lighter, more whole, more alive. Raphael tried to change. For a few days, he was attentive again. But Marina already knew the pattern. She knew it was temporary. That as soon as she let her guard down, the silence would return. Because it wasn't about her. It never was. It was about the power he wielded through absence. It was about the control he maintained through denial. It was about the punishment he applied simply because she dared to have emotional needs. 3 months later, Marina was in her own apartment. Small, simple, but filled with her own presence. Her own words. Her own emotions. She was no longer afraid of silence. Because now the silence was her choice. It was peace. It was freedom. She learned that there are people who use love as currency. Who give affection when you behave the way they want and withdraw it when you dare to be human. And she learned that this isn't love. It's manipulation. It's control. It's abuse. Real love doesn't punish. Doesn't disappear. Doesn't use silence as a weapon. Real love communicates, even when it's difficult. Confronts, even when it's uncomfortable. Stays, even when it's challenging. Marina finally understood that she deserved someone who chose to speak, not to silence. Who chose to be present, not absent. Who chose to love her consistently, not conditionally. And more important than that, she learned to be that person for herself. To listen to herself. To validate herself. To respect herself. Today, when Marina looks back, she doesn't feel anger toward Raphael. She feels gratitude. Because it was his silence that forced her to find her own voice. It was his absence that taught her to be present for herself. It was his punishment that freed her from the prison of a love that was never real. If you're living in a relationship where silence is used as punishment, where your words disappear into the void, where you feel invisible inside your own home, know this. You're not crazy. You're not overreacting. You're not weak for feeling pain from something that leaves no visible marks. The silent treatment is real. Emotional abuse is real. And you deserve more. You deserve to be heard. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to exist fully, without fear, without guilt, without having to beg for basic attention. His silence says nothing about your worth. It says everything about his inability to truly love. And when you finally understand that, when you finally choose your own voice over his silence, you'll discover something extraordinary. You'll discover that you were always strong enough to stay. And that means you were always strong enough to leave. The question is, when the silence becomes unbearable, what will you choose? To keep disappearing or to finally allow yourself to exist? Marina chose to exist. And that choice saved her life.